everybody, it is Calxiyn here. If you guys enjoyed this video, you guys should become patrons over on Patreon, and you guys should subscribe. So today we are going over some terrible RWBY hot takes that have to do with shipping that I've seen this week. So if one of these ideas sounds like yours, it maybe was because I read everything in my comment section. If you guys don't notice, I also reply to everything, but a lot of these are also from Discord, not my Discord, because my Discord good. But like Reddit and like Twitter, and I'm not trying to attack people that said these things. Like, we're not trying to do that today, alright? I'm not trying to be mean to people. At the same time, some of the things that have been said are people maybe having a stupid moment. Alright, and so again, this isn't an attack on anyone. I'm not trying to be like, oh, this person's a dumbass or this person's like an asshole, right? I'm just saying that the idea that is presented is very, very dumb. Or just not logical at all. And so the first thing that a couple people actually had put in my comment section, and I was surprised. If it's one person, it's like, that's okay. But if it's like 3 or 4 people that I'm like concerned, like there is concern, right? So the first thing that I noticed in the past 2 weeks with the Blake and Yang stuff was, well, Blake can't be gay, because if she was, she would have went for Ilya, and so if she's gay now, they change her sexuality just to put her with Yang, and this baffles, like, I am baffled reading this, okay, because if you guys don't know, I'm bisexual, right? And so, me, personally, I don't see any difference in how I pursue a guy versus how I pursue a girl, right? Like, we all have standards, that's the thing, and it's sort of, I tried to use this example on Twitter, but if a guy likes me, I may not just, like, go ahead and date them just because they like me. Like, I have standards, or maybe I like somebody else, it's whatever, right? Whatever the case may be. But I don't go with the first guy that breathes on me, and so the fact that people are like, well, gay people just take whatever they can get, so if Blake was gay, she would have went with Ilya, not like Ilya tried to murder her and her family or whatever, like, no, none of that, but yeah. So, when people said this, I was just like, don't you guys understand? And this comes from a place of ignorance, I think. Like, don't you guys understand that being straight and being gay, like, it's basically the same thing, except you're attracted to different people. I mean, it's the same thing in terms of how, like, relationships may work and dating may work. Everybody has standards. I don't, like, this would basically be saying, well, Weiss has to go with John because straight people just go with the first person that decides to breathe on them. Like, no one is saying that. Nobody has said that. So the fact that people are saying that in regards to Blake, I'm just like, what is happening? Especially because, could you imagine if it was like, oh, well, Weiss has to get with John now because they made eye contact. That's just how straight people work. Like, there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. So that was the first stupid idea I saw, because that's not how anything works. It's just not. There are tons of guys that have liked me and I've rejected them because there's a bunch of reasons. Like, maybe our personalities don't click, or maybe I'm not ready to date them, or maybe I see them as too good of a friend, right? All of those things could have happened in Blake's thought process. Also, Ilya tried to murder her family, so, you know, I don't know if she'd be comfortable dating Ilya. But, you know, that's neither here or there. So that was the first one, because I just want to clarify, like, I understand that people may be kids, and they may not understand, like, because nobody's taught them, like, about gay people, if that makes sense, right? Like, nobody's taught them this stuff, and so they go on the internet and they say things, and then everybody else is like, what? But, so I wanted to get that out of the way first. Like, I wanted to get that one out of the way first, because I'm concerned for some of you guys. You guys should not think that. You guys shouldn't think that, because that's not correct. Anyways, the other one is that Adam died, or Adam was killed, just to progress the ship. So basically what these people are saying, and this is where I'm like, this is just, like, there's no logic in this, but it's that basically Adam would have lived if it weren't for the fact that they wanted to put Blake and Yang together. And I don't understand that, because that's basically what they're saying, like, oh, well, Adam died just for the ship. So then you're implying to me, okay, well, if they didn't want to do the ship, would he still be alive? Because I think that's the question people need to ask themselves, because here's what I think, okay? After Volume 5, they wrote themselves into a corner with Adam, and because of the way that they wanted to progress the story, like, in the direction that the story was going, there wasn't time to sort of go and fix him. And you can't go back, right? I explained this in like almost every video, but if I'm writing a book and that book is volumes 4 to volume 6, I have like so much time to maybe edit that book before it ever sees the light of day, before it ever gets published, right? I can spend 10 years working on that book and then publish it, and then that's done. But when you're working on a TV show in this schedule, it's like, after you publish it, first of all, or after you put it out there, you can't go back. And then you also only have that year to write it and revise it. And so that was really Volume 5's problem, I think, was like lack of revision or whatever. But the thing is that after Volume 5 happened, I don't think that there was a feasible way to keep Adam around, but to go in the direction with the story that they were trying to go into. And I think that'll become way more evident as we go into volume 7. Like, they just had to write him out. And a lot of people may say, oh, well, they could have done this, they could have done that. But the fact is, we only have the past and the present of where the show is to look at. But we may see in the future, 3 or 4 volumes down the line, or even 1 or 2 volumes down the line, like, no, Adam just doesn't fit in here, and there's a reason for that. It's because he wasn't supposed to. Or they didn't want him to. And so I think, even if they didn't make Bumblebee canon, or make Bumblebee happen, he still had to go. And so this is just, like, I don't know, this is just such a dumb idea, like, oh, they just killed him because of the ship, as if there wasn't ample reason, like, other reasons, like, writing reasons to just kill him. And I think Vex said this on Twitter, but he was like, they had a problem after Volume 5. They killed the problem. And they did. Adam was the problem. They murdered the problem. And so I get why people are disappointed. People talk about wasted potential, or people talk about how, you know, Adam could have been so much more than he was. But at the same time, they just had to get rid of him. Like, looking at what they've written in the past and looking at where I think they want to go in the future, I just don't see a way where they could have done something here. Right? And I think that'll become more clear as the volumes progress. But to say that they just killed Adam off for the ship, I don't know. I can't find anything, like, comparable, like, in my mental database, because I don't, like, not a lot of the villains have died. But it's almost, I don't know, it's almost like, oh, well, they killed Roman, right? They killed Roman Torchwick just so Neo would have her arc later. Or, like, something like that, even though that has nothing to do with shipping. Like, the fact that you're killing a villain for the purpose of some sort of fan service. Oh, they killed Roman just so they could have Neo around because they want to service the fans. And we did a video about fan service already, so I'm not going to get into that. Where the fact is that Roman wasn't even supposed to last, like, throughout the volume. So they kept him for that fan service. You know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where it's like, no, they just had to kill him. It wasn't for the ship. So that's the other thing. The other thing that I want to talk about is actually from Twitter, because I've seen this a lot. Like, RWBY isn't about romance, and even in my comment section, RWBY isn't about romance, right? Like, if you care about the shipping, you're enjoying the show wrong, or you're ruining the show for the rest of us, all that stuff. And so this is where this idea, like, it just baffles me again. It's sort of like the first one. This baffles me. And here's why. Romance is a great way to develop your characters, and no, RWBY isn't about romance, but nothing, like, things don't need to be about romance to have romance, you know what I mean? And so, I don't understand where this idea is coming from. I don't know if it's just an anime thing, if that makes sense, because maybe a lot of anime that are in sort of the category as RWBY don't end up, like, having, like, romance because it's, you know, whatever, like, it's in that sort of genre, but in cartoons, and in TV, and in video games, like, the game or the television show may not be centered around romance, but romance happens because it's, like, if you have natural chemistry between characters, it's a great way to just develop people. Like, romance happens in shows that aren't about romance, and so the fact, like, oh, RWBY isn't about romance, they shouldn't focus on romance, they shouldn't focus on the ships, it's like basically saying, and I say this every time, oh, well, RWBY isn't about, like, you know, the parental bond between characters, so they shouldn't interact with their parents. Or like, oh, RWBY isn't about, like, it's not like, you know, the core isn't about, like, friendship or whatever, so they shouldn't be like, they shouldn't have friends, they shouldn't have friendly interactions. Like, romantic interactions are the same as any other interaction. It's the same as a, like, a friendship interaction or a, like, even a parent to child, like, development, right? Because when people say this, it's like romance is its own special thing, but it's really, like, it's really not, you know what I mean? And I couldn't fathom somebody being like, well, they shouldn't waste time on, like, Yang's relationship with Ty and Raven, because this show isn't about the parental bond between them and their kids. Like, no, it's just something natural that ends up happening. And so, no, the show isn't, like, it's not a romance, like, it's not you know, like a romantic drama or something like that. It's not like a romance novel or whatever. Like, the focus isn't the characters getting together, but what people don't seem to understand is that romance happens as a byproduct of having characters around each other and having like characters with chemistry around each other. And so the fact that people say this is like questionable, first of all. But then when people are like, well, it's bad writing, that kind of shows that they have no idea what writing, like what good writing is, because romance is a writing tool, just like developing other bonds between characters. And I'm sure that like any other, you know, writer will say that to you, especially like I'm pretty sure like if I went to ask Unicorn of War, they would explain to you the importance of romance as well. That's the only like writer YouTuber I can think of off the top of my head that's also RWBY related. So you understand what I mean? It's the same thing. It's just development between two characters, and it happens to develop into romance. And so I think that people are like, well, the show's not about romance, so they shouldn't focus on it. It's like, oh, well, I guess they shouldn't focus on like, you know, family stuff then, or they shouldn't focus on like the friendship. Like, no, that's not how anything works. And I think it would almost be bad writing not to include romance, because that's just unrealistic to an extent. Like, they're teenagers, they are going to have crushes on each other, they are going to like each other, and so like, no, we can't do romance, the show's not about that, and show like no one having feelings. I would almost say that that's more unrealistic than anything else, and that would make it pretty bad, but that's okay. On, like, to bridge that topic, though, a lot of people have been sort of like, well, Monty didn't want this, or Monty wouldn't have wanted that, and all that stuff. And it's kind of connected to the shipping. Like, Monty wouldn't have made, like, Blake and Yang gay, or Monty wouldn't have, like, done Adam dirty, like, or whatever it is. I think that, first of all, bringing up Monty is a pretty shitty, like, way to sort of further your argument. Because here's the thing, alright? I'm pretty sure that if Monty was still here, judging by the people that, like, or how he interacted with people on Twitter, I should say, he would, like, drag you guys into the dirt. Like, if you said, well, this isn't what he wants. Like, he would be, I'm pretty sure he would drag y'all on Twitter, first of all. Second of all, people that are saying that, and I don't know why, because you can see, like, in past videos or past, you know, interviews or past Q&As, he says certain things, especially about, like, the characters and the romance and, like, the LGBT side of it. And it's like, yeah, these characters are still teenagers, they're still figuring themselves out, you know what I mean? Like, there are videos of him saying stuff, and then there is, like, the fan in Monty of, well, Monty wouldn't like this because I don't like it. Like, that's basically why people sort of use him like that. And I think that's, first of all, that's pretty scummy, and you're a pretty terrible person. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I said I wasn't gonna attack people, I was gonna attack just the ideas. But no, those people are ridiculous. Like, that is a scummy thing to say, like, no matter how you cut it. But it's always like, oh, Monty wouldn't like this, but when there's evidence, like, if there's evidence to the contrary, the reason why those people are saying that is they're basically just saying, Monty wouldn't like this, and I'm saying that because I don't like it. Like, that's pretty much the only reason, right? People only say, oh, well, like, if Bumblebee doesn't happen, they were following Monty's plan, so you can't get mad at them. But if Bumblebee does happen and it did follow Monty's plan, people are gonna say, well, they're shitting on Monty's grave, or whatever people say, right? And so that's like, there's hypocrisy there. Hypocrisy that I'm not even gonna touch, because I'm pretty sure that you guys understand. Like, it's easy to be like, well, like, if this thing that you guys like doesn't happen, but the thing that I like happens, it was all part of the plan. But if the thing that I like doesn't happen, well, obviously they went off plan. And there's no way to know, like, unless, you know, they release something and they make sort of that sort of statement like, yeah, guys, like, this is what he wanted, here's some, like, rough notes or something like that. And I think even then people wouldn't accept that. But that's just a really shitty RWBY hot take that I've seen recently. But again, it's just like, oh, well, the creators are on your side until they do something you don't like, and then suddenly, oh, well, they've gone off plan or whatever. No. Stop it. Anyways, the other one that I've seen is that they've turned Yang and Blake into murderers for the ship. And so this is like an addition, I guess. Like, this is an add-on to, they killed Adam just for the ship, but they turned Yang and Blake into murderers. And so I've seen this a couple times. I've seen this in my YouTube comment section, I think, and I've seen this in other places, like just on Twitter and Discord and whatever. But I think Hunter said this best. the idea that heroes don't kill people is just tired and, like, boring, like, as a concept, right? And even then, like, I'm surprised a lot of people are calling it murder when, to me, it was clearly self-defense. Because if Adam grabbed the knife, he would have stabbed one of them. And you could be like, well, she could have grabbed the knife and threw it away, or she could have done this, or she could have done that, right? There are so many things like, oh, they could have done that. But, like, unless you've been in a life or death situation, you can't really judge, like, what the characters do. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't turn Blake and Yang into murderers for the ship. That's not exactly the most romantic thing they could have done to put them together, right? First of all, it's a character development moment, I think, for both of them, right, in some way, and we'll be able to see that moving forward, whether that's in the rest of this volume or even next volume or whatever. But it's also just sort of the idea that, like, they didn't murder him. Like, it wasn't like murder in cold blood, you know what I mean? Like, they only had so many options, and if you're in a situation where you have to defend yourself and you think that your life is in danger and so you stab him, like, that is gonna, you know, I think that's okay. Like, and so a lot of people are like, well, they murdered him. Like, I don't think we're watching the same scene, right? Because the way I see it is that he saw Blake try to grab the knife, and both of them saw each other trying to grab the knife, basically, or whatever was left over of Blake's weapon. Blake grabbed it and stabbed upwards because there weren't, like, many options. He could have grabbed her and tried to struggle the knife away. He could have done any sort of thing like that. And the reason why Yang stabbed Adam was because, all right, well, what if Blake didn't grab the knife? Right, there had to be some sort of backup plan, and so Yang stabbed him in the back because that was the only way that she could make sure that maybe Blake ended up safe. And so, self-defense is not murder, and it's not like they murdered him in cold blood. Like, if he was just lying there on the ground, like, helpless, and they fucking threw him off the waterfall, like, okay, that's murder. But in the context of the scene, and I think that even RWBY would be baffled that people don't understand this, it's like, yeah, this is a life or death situation because there are so many things that could have gone wrong. Adam could have grabbed the knife and then have moonslice Blake off the waterfall or something. We don't really know how his semblance works with other weapons or whatever. Like, if Yang didn't stab him in the back, maybe he could have, like, what if he tried to struggle the knife out, like, from Blake, and then Yang, like, didn't do anything because she's like, oh, well, we can't murder, we can't self-defense, we can't just kill him. So this is another idea where I'm just like, are you guys okay? Like, are we watching the same show? Because I get it, right? Sort of. Like, I get it. But even in Disney movies, the heroes murder people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Prince Eric rams Ursula, like, with the ship and skewers her, and he's still a hero, right? It's not like heroes never kill people, or heroes shouldn't kill people. And like Hunter said, I think the concept is just tired, like, in terms of writing-wise. Like, it's just a tired concept of, oh, the hero shouldn't murder. They have this moral code. Like, no, this was, first of all, this was self-defense. And even if it was murder, it's sort of like, people are still, like, heroes are still human, and heroes have murdered people all the time, right? Like, it's just, I don't know, especially, like, in the most wholesome thing that you could imagine, like, Disney movies, like, heroes murder, like, every day of the week. And so, I don't know where this idea came that heroes, like, have to be, like, the bigger person and not kill people even if their life is literally in danger. Like, no, this was self-defense. If anybody says it was murder, I think they need to watch the scene again, and I don't think they're thinking logically about the situation, because it's easy for us to be sort of, like, armchair psychologists, if you want to call it that, or armchair players, or whatever they say, and be like, well, they could have done this, they could have done that, but unless you've been in that situation where you're fighting for your life, like, you'd be surprised about sort of the things that you are willing to do to protect yourself. It's fight or flight, and Blake couldn't flight, like, she couldn't have ran from that situation. She was pretty much cornered between Adam and the waterfall. So it's one of those things where I'm like, nah, this is a very dumb idea. The last one that I want to talk about is, I guess, about, well, like, why was Yang able to fight? Her PTSD should have crippled her, and I don't have PTSD, okay? So I'm not going to speak too much on it because I don't know how the experience goes for somebody with PTSD. But I know other people who have PTSD have been saying, no, like, it's not that black and white. Like, PTSD is like any other mental illness, okay? It's complex and it varies, and, you know, like, it's not just like black and white, like, oh, well, she shouldn't be able to fight now because she's, you know, she's having PTSD flashbacks or anxiety or she's too scared. Like, I've heard that's just not how it works. And so I feel like that on this topic in particular, people should listen to people that actually have PTSD and make their own conclusions. Because I haven't seen one person who actually has PTSD say that this was unrealistic or that they had a personal problem with how this was portrayed. And there could be people out there, I don't know, but I think for us to just sit back and say, well, that's not how PTSD works when we don't have it, or we don't know anybody who has it, or people aren't listening to the people that have it. Like, at the end of the day, this is just some, like, people furthering their own ideas by saying, well, PTSD doesn't work like that. Sort of like how, like, Monty didn't plan this. Like, it's sort of like you're sort of making up facts or using, like, you're weaponizing the people with the PTSD. Like, oh, well, people with PTSD, like, this doesn't happen to them, so it's unrealistic, it's bad writing, like, it's bad representation, right? But those people are just weaponizing the people with PTSD who are like, no, like, this is pretty accurate. It doesn't, like, in this sort of situation, X, Y, and Z. Right? It's more weaponizing people who are like, didn't ask for it, first of all, like, didn't ask to be used as a weapon for your bad argument, and then sort of being like, no, this was fine, you're just talking out of your ass. A lot of these are just talking out of the ass, so that's sort of the last one. I don't have a lot to say on that, because again, I don't have PTSD, but I would say listen to the people that have PTSD and decide whether or not that you're just making sort of this argument for yourself, or you're actually listening to them and sort of wanting RWBY to get better with their representation of people, like, with different mental disorders. Because as far as I can tell, the people with PTSD are like, no, y'all are wrong. Like, this is pretty realistic to me. So that is it. This has been a long video. I mean, not all these were about shipping, but I feel like all of these more or less stem from the shipping stuff, especially most of them. Like, the PTSD part is sort of something separate, but I thought I would talk about it anyway, so yeah. Apparently you guys like to listen to me yell, so I hope that this did something for you, and that's why I don't have Hunter here, because I knew that, like, this was gonna be long. But anyway, I hope you guys had fun, and if you guys have, like, any of these questionable opinions, again, I'm not trying to hate on you or anything, I just think that you should sort of do a retrospective and think about, again, like I said, this goes for everything. Are you making your arguments based off of actual, like, logic and reasoning, or are you making them just because you want to be right, sort of thing, or just because you think that you're right and everybody else is wrong? Like, are you using, for example, again, are you using Monty and his plan as a weapon just to protect something that you don't like, when Monty would never say stuff like that in the first place? Like, that is the question that I'm leaving you guys with. I think a lot of people need to think about whether or not what they're saying actually makes sense, or whether it's just something that they're saying because they feel like that they, like, need to be right somehow, or that how they feel is the right answer. But, like, I like that, like, saying, like, your feelings aren't facts, or whatever that Philip DeFranco says, because it's so true. It's just, like, just because you feel a certain ways about something doesn't mean that, like, what you're saying is right, especially with the first one, too. Like, oh, well, Blake can't be gay, or else she would have gone with Ilya. Like, does that make logical sense to you? Does it? Like, does it? And if it does, just, like, think about it some more. That's all that I'm asking with all of these points. Just, if you think that it makes sense, think about it again, and again, and again, until you get somewhere that does make sense. And I will see you guys later. Bye. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you guys want to support the channel, you guys should be patrons, just like our wonderful patrons whose names will come on the screen now. $10 patrons get videos sometimes 2 weeks in advance, sometimes 3 weeks in advance, basically much earlier than anyone else. They can also request us to do a video for them, so this could be a reaction, a theory, a discussion, anything like that. Our $5 patrons get a week in advance early access, or somewhere within that time frame, so between 2 days early and 7 days early, basically, but usually it's 7 days early, because I'm good with my scheduling. Anyway, our $1 patrons and all of our patrons above the $1 tier get access to our Discord server, so if you guys want to talk with us, talk with other fans of whatever you're watching right now, you guys can, and I hope that we will see you there. Bye.